What's up, guys? It's early April. Hope everyone's doing well. Got an exciting video today. Wanted to first though say thanks to those that reached out over the last week or so when my account got hacked. My entire Google account got hacked along with the YouTube channel. The hackers posted some live crypto investing video on my channel. Honestly thought it, all of it was gone for good. It seemed like I was gonna have to start back at zero, but fortunately after a few days I was able to get it recovered. But just want to say thanks to those that reached out in regards to that. But that's not the reason for today's video. Today's video is the first walkthrough of my new farm. And some of you may or may not know, but I recently bought a new farm earlier this spring, late winter, and in order to purchase this one I had to sell my old farm. And I'll be honest, that was a lot tougher than I expected to let that one go. Most of you guys that have followed know how much time and effort and hard work I put into making that farm a really good whitetail farm, and the best years of that one are ahead of it. So from that standpoint, it's really hard to give it up, even though I knew going into it likely wasn't a forever farm for me. But it certainly didn't make it any easier. But definitely happy for the new owner. I think that place is going to be killer starting this fall and certainly in the years ahead. But now onto this farm. It's a little bit bigger than my other one, so it's such a unique scenario, and I'll kind of walk through or talk through it as I walk around today. But it's a lot different than the one I had in terms of what it needs done, what it has right now. It's very much a blank slate. First of all, I think there's a little bit of hunting history. I don't know a lot of it, but I do think the previous owners hunted, but there is no food on it. There's nothing's really set up from a strategic hunting standpoint. There's the habitat is here, but it certainly could use some improvement as well. So I've always said I don't think I would ever be interested in purchasing a turnkey farm or anything remotely close to turnkey. I love these unique opportunities that it's basically a blank canvas and I get to draw it up the way I want. And from that standpoint, it's a dream for me. The reality is, when I call this a dream farm, any farm I own is a dream farm to me. I never thought I'd be a landowner ever. I've always thought it was just a dream. So I'm tickled to death to be able to put my name on this piece. I can't wait to get to work. Like I said, I'll talk through today some of the projects I have in mind, short term and long term as well. But man, I can't wait to share the story of this piece, and certainly can't wait to transform it. Right away, one of my favorite things about this piece as I'm kind of coming in on this opening lane is just the tree diversity. Almost the entire farm is trees, and most of them are desirable species. Most of them are 30 to 35 years old, so relatively young from a tree standpoint. But as you can see, you got some big pines back here, a bunch of oaks. The oaks are probably the most common species on this farm. There's walnuts. Like I said, everything was pretty much everything. There's obviously a lot of volunteer cedars and stuff, but pretty much all the other trees were planted. And so from that standpoint, you have a lot of desirable species. There are areas where the trees didn't do as well, and I'll talk about what I'm gonna do with those. But it's pretty cool to have this entire thing be pretty uniform, good tree species. And if you remember, within a year, less than a year ago, I planted 6,000 trees on my farm in this same program. So from going from that farm to this farm, I more or less got to snap my fingers and jump 30 years in the future, because this is essentially what my old farm will look like in 30 years. These were planted in rows through a program just like the one I used on my last farm. So it's kind of cool to start at one end of the spectrum and jump ahead to what this looks like now. The other thing is kind of cool, even though, you know, a lot of this is, if you look at a big picture, it looks pretty homogeneous. There's definitely terrain changes, but in terms of the, you know, the tree height and everything like that and spacing, it's relatively homogeneous. And I don't think any of the previous landowners did any type of, you know, tree management in terms of TSI or tree thinning or anything like that. And it certainly needs it in some areas. Some areas the trees are spaced out pretty good, and for most of the farm, you kind of look through here, here's some dead trees in this little spot, but even where some of the trees are living, you have a really good grassy base, instead of just, you know, just straight leaf litter. Like, the trees are spaced out enough that you have good growth in between. Unfortunately, there are areas where the Lespedeza is taken over, just in pockets, and so I'm hoping I can, if I get ahead of it, I can, you know, just start to maintain that before it gets too crazy. But there are definitely areas where it's starting to take over. So that's one challenge I have ahead of me. But here's a section that I'm coming into. It's, you know, I really do like cedar trees. You know, obviously they can be negative and if they get too thick. But this is a section here where, you know, they're spaced out pretty good. The deer are still gonna feel comfortable traveling through. There's all kinds of trails going through here. You can see all the little ones coming up, the young cedars, and if you're not careful, those things can, you know, get crowded pretty quick. And I will do some thinning in this spot, but in general, I really like it. I think it makes the farm hunt a lot bigger. I think it provides some nice little thermal pockets for the deer. I love hunting out of cedar trees, you know, once they get big enough. To me, there's way more positives than negatives. You know, I know some guys hate cedar trees, but I'm not one of them. I think when managed right, the deer certainly frequent these areas that have some cedar tree cover. This spot's pretty cool. I walked this farm twice before I bought it, and I've actually been able to run cameras, you know, prior to closing for probably 2 months now, right before a lot of the bucks started shedding. And so I got a good feel for some of the deer that made it through the season. This was all obviously post-season, and it was very promising to see the number of good young bucks with potential. So I'm excited about that. I found a couple sheds. But this was a spot that I kind of discovered just by accident, just walking around. It's a little spring, and it never froze over. Even when we had temps negative 20 degrees, it was always open water. And so the deer were definitely using this a lot, especially now too, but yeah, especially during that winter time when you couldn't find open water anywhere else. So kind of a cool spot. It's tucked in the middle of these cedars, and so what I did, just because I think this is going to be a hot spot all year round, I found a spot up here that I think will make it a perfect little hidey hole clover chicory plot. I'll plant multi-year in that, but there's already kind of a natural trail coming through right here, and I just basically followed it out to where I wanted to put that little clover chicory plot, and just made it just a little bit easier for them to travel. They already were. As you can see, there's a trail going through here. But I came through, just kind of cut the sides of these cedars down just to open it up just a little bit more. Right just beyond this little gap is where I would have the plot and the stand. Really good access, good wind direction for that plot. But by opening this up a little bit, it does two things. One, it's gonna make the deer a little more comfortable. It's not as tight for them. They can see a little bit more. But two, I'm also gonna be able to see them. This big cottonwood tree right over here is probably the one I'd lean towards. There's a couple smaller oaks that would also work. But if I get up in that cottonwood tree, I'm gonna be able to see all the way down to that water hole, which I would say it's 100 yards. So obviously not bow range, but to be able to see deer down there and work their way all the way up through this lane, it's gonna be pretty sweet. But this is that clover plot. I'll probably come in here, take a couple of these little trees out of the middle. Won't have to do much though. It's naturally open. It's kind of on a little flat top here. Like I said, good access. There's cedars protecting my access as well already, which is perfect. It's not very big, probably 1/3 of an acre, but I think it's certainly a kill spot. It's one of those kind of no-brainer spots where I'd want to have just a little micro plot here. So that will be one of my early spring projects, is to make this into the multi-year clover and chicory. Probably get a stand in the, I might decide that later. The cottonwood's gonna lose its leaves early, so I'd probably need to take some cedar branches or something up with me into this one. Or there's these 3 oaks, potentially that oak right there that's right in between these 2 cedar trees would work. It's a little further off the plot, but I don't think it's gonna hurt anything, so I'll kind of make that decision a little bit later. The first step is to get some clover in here. You can see back into a section of variety of oaks right here with some cedar sprinkled throughout. You know, right now, so it's getting on the cusp of being too thick in some spots, but right now it's about perfect as far as the spacing. It's easy to travel through here, and this thing's tore up with scrapes. Just walking right through here pretty easily. So a lot of the farmers like this as far as the tree spacing. Pretty uniform, but just about the right amount of space for the deer to travel through and be comfortable. Yeah, I think with where this covers at, this farm's gonna hunt a lot bigger than it is. It's already good size, but it's gonna hunt even bigger for sure, just because my axe is gonna be really good in some of these areas. This is another really intriguing spot for me. I'm not very far from where that multi-year plot was I was just talking about. But this one, it's almost got this wall of cedars right here. And I hate not to take advantage of that, because there's some oak trees, really good stand trees just beyond those. So access would be really good. And for the most part in this lane, there's a couple decent oaks, but for the most part there's a lot of dead and dying trees, like some half dead or dead ash trees in here that I would not hurt anything if I came and cleared this out to make another plot. Again, it's not super far from that other one, 100 yards or so, so I don't want to necessarily compete these 2 plots, but maybe something different here, maybe rut greens or some type of brassica combination, just to complement the multi-year over there and offer a little bit of diversity. But anytime I find these spots that are such good access, I mean, it's like a built-in screen already. I hate not to utilize it for a hunting location or a food plot. So I'll need to kind of decide what I want to do there. As I'm coming out of here, I did eyeball the tree stand already. You see this trail. If I follow that, if I continue that, it runs right into that little what will be a clover chicory plot above that water hole. And then you have this wall of cedars and then another opening, so it's kind of the natural travel route through here. But there's the pin oak, so it'll take some trimming, but the perfect tree right there, you see it sticking above those cedars. That's that wall of cedars that kind of just makes an elbow right here. So I'll actually go over on that side and show you. But one of the days I came here, stood on this. Obviously I knew that they're traveling this. I looked about 150 yards and there's a solid 5-point side sitting on that opening, and they cross. There's a ditch right here. They cross to the top and travel this, so that makes that spot a no-brainer. In fact, I got one stand with me today. I may even hang that stand. But I'll show you just how thick this is and why I say I've got to find a way to take advantage of this access. This right here would be where the plot is. They already travel it. You got this stand tree right there above these cedars. It's a pin oak completely surrounded by cedars. Climb up and down with deer 15 yards away easily. So I will have a stand in this tree, whether it's today or later. This is another no-brainer for sure. As you can see, this section, a lot of pin oaks, pretty crowded in here. So this is a spot where I'll probably do some TSI, free up some of the better ones. You know, if I can find, there's a couple white oaks sprinkled through here, but try to release those just because there's not as many in this section, and I'd rather have those. So, but like I said, there really hasn't been anything done to this timber from what I can tell. A lot of single species rows right here. The only thing that's really doing any TSI is the beavers down along this edge down by the pond. But I'll come in here with a chainsaw here pretty soon and do some thinning. Alright, here's another cool spot. Again, I haven't fully decided what I want to do with it. I just know it sets up for hunting really well. So you can kind of see natural opening in this timber right here. Some dead trees, it would be easy to clear out of the way. But then on this side, you have a row or a couple of rows of really good pines. Perfect stand location trees. Nice, tall, straight, bunch of cover, back cover, and predominant wind advantage. So I would come down that edge, pick one of these, and maybe that one, to have a stand in here. And I think short term, I might go with just a little kill brassica plot in here, just to kind of sweeten it. It's a little bit bigger section of timber, and to be able to sweeten up this area from a bow range standpoint. But long term, I would think about making a destination grain plot here. It's a flat ridge, and it falls off on that side. You can kind of see maybe 100 yards there. It falls off. You get that southern aspect, good late season bedding close by. Really, the whole thing would be bedding. So you'd be placing the food. You'd clear out 2 acres, 2.5 acres, and really there's so many of the same tree in here you really wouldn't be affecting the timber all that much. But clear out this to plant food right here. And again, your late season access would be pretty killer. Any type of westerly wind, you wouldn't need a blind or anything, because those pine trees are great cover. But man, I think you'd have so much daylight activity right here, just with that secluded as it is. It's fun to envision what this could look like long term. Like I said, short term, it could just be a rut location. Don't even put food in here, to be honest. Get a nice opening for some shooting lanes. Build a mock scrape on one of these trees out here, and it'd be a pretty sweet location. But I think sweetening it up with a little food would be ideal. You know, there's just little pockets like this that are already somewhat cleared out that makes sense short term to put some food with not too much effort. I mentioned the beavers cutting down these trees by the pond, but all these little shoots, the amount of deer browse on them is pretty cool. I mentioned the pond as I walk across the dam here. It's a beautiful pond. But that's one thing I don't have a ton of experience in that I'm really looking forward to diving into and learning more about, is the pond management side. And I know that there's a lot you can do, but just trying to figure out, you know, how to optimize it. What species, I think you can. I've brought Remy here, we fished a couple times. I think you can catch a 10 or 12 inch bass on every cast right now, but I'm not convinced, or I have no proof that there's anything else in here besides that. You know, I'm sure there is, but it is loaded with those 10 to 12 inch largemouth. And so just trying to figure out how to better that. We need to take some out, add some fish, you know, whatever it may be, but I'm excited to learn more about pond management. I've never had a property with a pond like this on it. Another spot that I'm really excited about. Well, let me back up. First of all, this farm as it sits right now does not have the greatest access from the east or the south. And so right away I'm gonna create an access trail that runs along the east side, gets to the south end, and that's gonna solve that problem. I'm gonna be able to come in at various points instead of the access road right now is right through the middle of the farm. And so to minimize that disturbance and get that to the outside. But a spot like this, what I'll do once I have that access, I'm gonna pick up a little boat or something I can leave out here and get in on that corner and come across via water, and you can just park the boat right here and hop up. Every tree in here is the perfect tree stand tree. But this pond has these little coves where at the end of this cove, the ditch runs up and kind of creates that head of the ditch travel route. And so especially during the rut, really any time of season, but especially during the rut, you park the little boat right here, climb up in a tree, you know, like this oak up here. Make it so they definitely can't cross right here. Make them cross at the top of the ditch. And I think you're gonna get a ton of cruising activity on this hillside. It just sets up so well for bucks to cruise this. The thermal's pulling down towards the pond. You know, your predominant wind's also blowing this way. There's already really good trails crossing. Here's the head of the ditch. I'm standing at the head of the ditch right now. So one of these trees here, all your crossing, there's a big trail here. There's another one right here. So you get in a tree like that, blow the wind across the pond, you access by water, and it's a spot you'd pack a lunch and sit all day, because I think the bucks are going to cruise around this non-stop. I will probably focus some of my earlier TSI efforts in this, just to promote a little bit more bedding on this hillside. But man, you talk about a killer spot with killer wind advantage and killer access. and kind of fun access by boat. This is it. Again, another tree protected by cedars. So coming up, I mean, you can barely, I don't know if you can see over the cedars, but where I would be walking, you can't see from the water all the way to the back of the tree. So I think it'd be pretty killer. You get a lot of cruising activity through here. So now I'm just at the top end of this. You know, that drops all the way down towards the pond where I just was. Now I'm at the top where this timber kind of has this edge where it opens up out here. And this is an area where the trees didn't do as well for whatever reason. There's a lot of dead trees out here. You can see how open it is. And that's where the Lespedeza is really becoming an issue, where, you know, there's no, getting all the sunlight, there's really no competition. So you can see it all out there. But one of the biggest challenges I have, you know, when you think about late season food, like your grain plots, you always try to think about those predominant winds, north and west, during that late season, and how you can set it up for good access. And this farm doesn't have the perfect answer, perfect spot for that. This is the no-brainer spot to do it. One, because I want to, you know, battle that Lespedeza. So if I can clear all this out and plant something different, that's going to put me ahead of the game for controlling that stuff. But two, it's a really good spot for the deer. This is going to be great bedding, kind of a southeast aspect to it. Really good security, be able to hop right into this late season or more of your destination food plot. So it sets up perfect for them, not necessarily for me. So I got to find a way. I think my best option is to be at the top end of it, and where I can blow a west wind that's not down to this bedding. The only problem is where I'm blowing it would be back where I started, where that little that spring was, that little water hole. So I'd be kind of blowing it into that and towards those cedars. So we'll kind of have to see. There's really good southerly wind advantage, so I'll probably keep some of those pine trees that are out in the middle, keep those for stand sites. But west wind, it gets a little bit more challenging. But I think this is where I want to put the food, which is going to make, you know, the cruising in this pocket of timber even more, you know, especially as you get later in November. You're coming off this food, does bedding in here, and the buck's cruising through. So I think that's what my plan is for right now. Is to, again, more or less just battle all this Lespedeza that's coming in, clear that out, plant some food. It's a good flat spot, good soil already, so it makes sense from that standpoint. But you know, there's not as much clearing required here too. So this is probably where I'll maybe do some soybeans as a late season grain plot up here. For time purposes, I'm going to skip through a lot of this, but there's just so much of this type of cover that just is already pretty good. The deer use it, but just over time I'm just going to chip away at making it a little bit better, freeing up some of the better trees that, you know, it's just kind of work that's, you know, somewhat overdue in my opinion, to optimize the better trees that, you know, should be probably further along at this point. So there's a lot of work like that. The other thing too, as I come into another open area, one of the big projects that I'm looking forward to, it's going to be a little bit longer term, but all this is CRP income right now, and obviously having income on a farm makes it doable, makes it pencil out. And so the thing about this CRP income though is it can't be renewed once the contract is up. So once that contract is up, I'm gonna have to find a way to get more income or to create any type of income on this. So I'm gonna strategically, which is the part that I'm excited about, strategically draw in some tillable fields. I'll do a combination of corn, beans, alfalfa, but create some tillable acres that I'll farm for some income. to replace all the lost CRP income. And there's some natural spots that, you know, I hate cutting down trees, or clearing trees that are good trees. And it's going to require some of that for sure to create enough tillable acres to make it worth it. But there's a lot of natural areas like this where if you look at the soil maps, it's really good soil. In fact, some areas are already terraced and tiled and set up for farming, even though they've got trees on it. But I'm going to focus on some of these areas where I can clear out some of the lesser trees and create tillable acres. Like I said, this will be a couple years down the road, but it's going to be a ton of fun drawing those shapes in the way I want them, creating my pinch points, creating my access, creating, you know, areas that are comfortable for the deer to use. That's such a unique opportunity, in my opinion, for a farm to be able to do that without just, you know, bringing in a dozer and clear cutting in an entire section of good trees. There's some natural areas on this farm that will already lend itself to that, and having, you know, tillable acres, that much tillable food, some alfalfa, that's only going to help the hunting as well, and to help the deer, not necessarily the hunting, but help the deer herd that calls this place home. So that will be, like I said, a little bit longer term project, but that is something I plan to do on this property, and it's something that to me is such a unique and cool project. One of the ones that I'm most excited about for this property. Well, I've covered a lot of ground, but still haven't even covered close to all of it. But for time purposes, I'm gonna wrap it up and grab the chainsaw and do a little TSI work before the day's over. But I can't overstate just how excited I am about this property and the work to be done with it. You know, I tell people all the time, like, it's the process of it all and the journey of it that's the most rewarding anymore. The hunting's fun, and obviously that's what we're working towards, but man, just being able to envision these things, put the sweat equity in, and watch them come to fruition is such a rewarding process. And to have a blank slate like this property to do it on is certainly a dream come true. So I'm gonna try to do a better job of documenting everything. You know, it's one of those things where, yeah, of course it's gonna open me up a little bit more, but it's not fun also not telling the whole story. You know, I love, again, this whole aspect of it, so I'm gonna try to share more of the entire process every step of the way as I transform this piece. And man, it's just gonna be so fun to watch this fall and the years ahead. My buddy and I have been somewhat jokingly calling this the Buck Factory, because ultimately I think that's what it's going to be when it's all said and done, and you know, I'm able to make all these improvements. But such a cool property, such a blank slate, and like I said, I can't wait to share the story of it. So hopefully it was a fun little walkthrough. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch.